Woo! What's going on, everyone? I'm Jaren, and today we are talking about Dune Part 2. In this second half of the story of Dune, we follow Paul Atreides as he finally unites with Chani and the Fremen while seeking revenge to the conspirators who destroyed his family. First thing is first, I have not read any of the Frank Herbert novels, and I have not checked out the 1984 film. Nor did I check out the miniseries adaptation for Dune back when it was released on TV for the year 2000. I just had no intention of checking out part one of Dune when it was first released, especially with Denis Villeneuve behind the camera. And I finally got around to it back in early 2022 when I was going through my DVD pile of screeners. And boy, did I regret not checking this out back when it was first released in 2021. Now, hear me out for a second. Had Part 2 stuck to its original November 2023 release, had this movie had a fair shot at the Oscars, I think, in my opinion, that Dune Part 2 would have swept up award season with Oppenheimer. Is that too much? Is that just a hot take? Is that just me? I can only imagine those who actually showed up to Part 1 on the day it was released in order to wait 28 months later to get the second half of this story. And I gotta say, it's worth the wait, especially if you're paying extra for that really big screen experience. I was genuinely mesmerized by the characters, the world, the economics, and even the beliefs that they began to establish and build upon in the first film. Then it was really incredible to watch all those puzzle pieces kind of fall into place and begin to build a bigger picture to what the sequel had in store. First off, all the technical details that went into this production were just jaw-dropping and immaculate. With the costume designs, props, prosthetics, makeup, set designs, special effects, and even all the visual effects, it really pulled me into the world of Arrakis and the conflict that were happening between houses. Even the sandworms were just as spectacle leveled as the dinosaurs that were in the Jurassic Park franchise. The sound design was incredibly executed alongside Hans Zimmer's epic score. Greg Fraser's work as a cinematographer definitely brought Denis Villeneuve's grand vision to scale, alongside with these breathtaking wide shots of the desert, the worms, and the war. Even the way that they framed and choreographed the action, the stunts, and even the fight sequences were very gritty and sharp. Getting into some of the talent here, starting off with Timothée Chalamet, I have always considered this actor to be Oscar bait. And that's not discrediting his work, that's not discrediting his talent. It's just that I've always been told at how great of an actor he is, opposed to actually see him take on a role that I've become a fan of. But as for the role of Paul Atreides, I've definitely loved his transformation of the character between part 1 to part 2. We get to see him struggling in order to embrace his destiny, to obtain power, and that walks a fine line between taking revenge for his family or leading the Fremen to a more hopeful future. Now, with resilience and faith, he learns the ways of the Fremen in order to live, in order to survive, and even to fight. Zendaya fans rejoice because she is more front and center this time around as the character of Chani. I know that was people's biggest complaint when it came to part 1, but I love Zendaya's performance because it is strong, especially when it comes to conveying emotions through her reactions, especially her eyes. I do love the progression that her character goes through, especially with her blossoming relationship and frustrations with Paul. Now, I do admit that their relationship was just all over the place, but I do respect the later half of this movie when they decide to add some stakes to where they stood in terms of battle and romance. Enter in Academy Award nominee Austin Butler, who plays the new big bad, the Baron's nephew, Fade Rotha. Now, he is one stone cold son of a bitch, and he would just kill his own men for no reason at all and would say some of the most maniacal and cheeky one-liners throughout the entire movie. But I do have to admit that although he was menacing and badass in the film, I was a little underwhelmed that he didn't become a much bigger threat to Paul up until the last 20 minutes of the movie. With that being said, I was nailed to my seat at how tightly tense and gripping that final duel between them was. They even did it without music in order to not overlap the sound of their blades clashing into one another. Getting into my nitpicks to negatives about the film, it's the pacing. It really is a long movie and you're gonna feel it. If you are familiar with Denis Villeneuve's filmography, you can tell that he likes to put story and visual effects first before he gets into the action set pieces. Now, I'm not saying that it's very dialogue and dull heavy as Oppenheimer or Killers of the Flower Moon, but where we left off in the tail end of part one, we jump right into part two with a lot more meat for this story, with a lot more introductory character arcs that need to get flushed out. For example, the Bene Gesserit's systematic agenda in order to gain dominion over the Emperor, the feuding houses, and the Fremen. And this subplot also introduces the characters played by Florence Pugh, Christopher Walken, Lea Seydoux, as well as the character Jessica, played by Rebecca Ferguson, given a lot more to do in the counterplay. While comparing similar story structures such as James Cameron's Avatar, Game of Thrones, The Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, and pretty much anything Ridley Scott would direct, there are a lot of obstacles that our characters must overcome before they rise to the occasion, before they lead their armies into battle. And they really do take their time developing that path that would lead to the big payoff. And boy, do you feel those 2 hours and 46 minutes. I wouldn't have minded if this movie was an hour longer. In my opinion, I felt like the final act was rushed. I did feel like the final showdown, the war, could have been a little more than 30 minutes. But to be fair, this was the most action-packed movie that Denis Villeneuve has done. I'm not trying to spoil anything or give away any important details, but it is important to know going into this that although part two wraps up the second half of the book, there are many signs that lead to an inevitable third installment. Now, with that being said, there are story elements and character arcs that feel inconclusive, and by the time the credits started to roll, my entire audience, the energy, they all went, "That's it?" So I did my research, and out of the 28 novels of Dune, 3 in particular follow the character of Paul Atreides, including Dune Messiah and Children of Dune. And considering the major changes that they've done for a character and the fate of that character at the end of part 2, I think there's more to explore if they decide to do a screen adaptation for like 1 or 2 more sequels. With the success they're having at the box office, you can tell that the studio wants to jump on right away for another movie, but Denis Villeneuve is a busy man and he does have his heart set to do other projects before he can completely dive back into the world of Dune. Overall, this was an epic, sensational, immersive, and cinematic achievement that adds more to the reason of why we go to the movies. Now, I don't think that this is the big screen event that will save the theater-going experience the way that many film critics have been hyping this up to be. The blood, sweat, and tears that went into this project by the cast and crew, as much as the first film, deserves so much praise. I cannot wait to see this film again, and I cannot wait to see what they might have in store for us in the near future for a part 3. Alright guys, that's all I got to share about that movie. Don't try to pirate this at home and on your little laptop. Go out to the biggest screen possible at your local movie theater and support this film. Thank you guys again so much for taking some time out of your day to talk some movies with me. I am Jaren. Look forward to more reviews, and I will see you guys at the theater. Take care.